I'm Bob Balfance from the Everyone Graduate Center, and along with my colleagues, I want to welcome you to our Supporting Seniors During COVID-19 Cross-State High School Redesign Collaborative Solutions Forum. And this really came about because we heard from a number of our schools that they were really looking for an opportunity to dialogue with other schools in the high school redesign process. And not only schools in their state, but schools across state. Especially in these extraordinary times when there's no playbook for how to respond to things like COVID-19, there was a real desire for folks to be able to dialogue and talk with others in the same position and be able to share ideas and questions and thoughts, and where people have been able to work on solutions so that your good work can be spread elsewhere. So on the call today, we have high school redesign teams from at least 5 states. It could be more. Don't want to leave anybody out, but I know for sure we have folks from Ohio, New Mexico, Mississippi, New York, and Louisiana. Maybe we'll have some from Massachusetts and some from some other states as well. What we're gonna do is really gonna have a focused dialogue, so we call it solutions forum, sharing what we're learning, what we're doing, what we're trying on 2 time-sensitive questions, right, which are really this year's seniors. And 2 things about them, there's some seniors that still have to earn credits or meet requirements to be able to graduate this year. And then there's other group of seniors that are on track to graduate, but may not have had a secondary placement in place when schooling became remote, or may have had a placement, but are now rethinking it because of the circumstances of COVID-19. So we're going to talk about those 2 groups of seniors and share ideas and thoughts on how to support them and respond to their needs. And then we'll just spend a little bit of the time at the end reflecting on this forum and getting your sense of its value, if we should continue a series of these during the rest of the spring, and if so, on what topics and what way. And then we'll close up. Before we get going, I'm gonna ask Amanda just to take a minute to give us some insight on how we're gonna manage our dialogue today, as we have, I believe, over 70 people signed up. So we're gonna have to be using some of the functions of the system to really manage a dialogue with folks of that size.
With that, thank you, Bob. We are asking everybody to use the chat function to offer up resources and pose questions. We have the lovely Linda and Hannah who will be moderating that and repeating that back for Bob as we work through the different topics. We are also kindly asking that you might rename yourself so that when Bob does call on you, or there's a specific idea, that he can associate that appropriately. And then also, unless you are called upon or everything, we're just asking everybody to stay muted to kind of free up the noise space throughout the discussion as well, to let everybody have an opportunity for sharing. And I think that's everything. This will be recorded. We will make sure that this gets shared out afterwards, and in addition to all the resources as well. So.
And then Amanda,
someone would like to know how to rename their self.
Oh yes, so if you click on your name under participants, on the upper right-hand side next to your name, you should be able to select a button that says More, and it should give you the opportunity to rename yourself.
And Amanda, the one other thing we're going to ask folks is when they, because we're primarily going to be dialoguing through chat, when you share an idea or a question through chat, please just quickly identify your school and your state, just again, because people are really interested in having this cross-state dialogue, and also to be able to follow up afterwards. Thanks.
Awesome.
All right, so where we're going to begin, as many of you know us, we often begin with a circle, and we're not going to do a virtual circle because of time limitations. Though I will say at the end, in the resource section, we found some schools that have very good resources on how to do virtual circles, and those are important ways to keep the community going when we're all remote. What we're going to do instead is a little version of a word wall meets chat, and just ask everybody to get used to using the chat function. If I were to ask you, how are you doing? What would be your 1-word response? Just put that in the chat box. So how are you doing? Give us your 1-word response to that in the chat box.
We have a stressed, well, great, overwhelmed, coping, surviving, overwhelmed, good, coping, uneasy, fine, well.
Drifting.
Drifting, great, okay, meh. Surviving, missing students, zoomed out, cool, hello from Rocinante, Alive.
Wonderful.
Sitting, doing good. I'm going to pause now, Bob.
Yeah.
Back to you.
Thank you. So that gives us a sense of where we are. And it is, you know, it's a, as it makes sense, a range of places. So let's dig in together and do some problem solving. So one group we're concerned about are these students who need to earn credits or complete requirements to graduate in the spring. And what do we know about this group and also the responses under COVID? So we know that most states by now have waived or are allowing local districts to waive sort of requirements for graduation beyond core credits, things like state tests or measures of college and career readiness. Many, perhaps not all states, are sort of waiving those for this year. A number of states are taking the approach that if a student were on track to graduate in March when schooling became remote, that is, if they were enrolled in the classes they needed to graduate, and if they were seen as passing them at that point, they're saying that's good enough and that should count as earning a credit for that course. Some other states have taken the approach of suggesting multiple ways students could demonstrate course fulfillment or meeting course requirements, things from local tests to projects. Some are saying you could use work experiences, things that the students have already done that demonstrates their competency in that area could be taken as a metric to show they have enough knowledge to earn the credit. And then they're leaving it up to individual districts, or in some cases even schools, and we'll be interested to hear from you in a minute on that, to figure out how to do that. A few states have yet to issue graduation requirements under COVID, although it's getting smaller and smaller. And for those of you that are interested in it, the best resource we found is from Excel and Ed, which has an updated daily database of state responses. The other things we know, right, is that there are many students who must complete graduation requirements in the spring, and typically they've been supported often through frequent face-to-face contact with teachers, counselors, mentors, or other community partners, right? There's a lot of like individualized sort of nagging, nurturing, and multiple reminders and things to help make sure these students complete their work to pass their needed courses. And a lot of that, right, has been disruptive, right? Folks are trying to find ways to replace it, but initially there was quite a bit of disruption to the processes that had been in place to help seniors get through and earn those final credits. And the other piece we're going to add just to support to prompt our conversations, we know even with flexibility, even with responding in creative ways to provide the student supports that got disrupted, there's going to be some students that will fall short. And traditionally that would lead to summer school, though we know in a number of places, summer school itself is already going to be virtual, which leads to a whole range of challenges. And then in some cases, students may not earn a diploma and will be back next year. And that's where we have to be very thoughtful to make sure that that's not just rinse and repeat, but in fact, it is used to advance their pathways to adult success by making connections to dual credit and CTE certificates and things that help move them forward, not just sort of hold them in place. So that's sort of our background, what we know broadly is happening. And now we want to hear from you. So we have a couple of polls today to help us see where we are. And our first one is just asking, has your high school been providing guidance on how to modify graduation requirements during COVID? And Amanda's going to put the poll up, and we're going to get to see our responses in live time. So just, has guidance been provided to your high school on how to modify graduation requirements during COVID-19? Yes, no, unsure. Let us know where you're at. Let's give it one more minute. We're at about 35 of 60, 62% response. All right, well, I think that we have a good sense that just about 80% of folks have said they have been provided guidance on how to modify requirements at their school. Another 20% are unsure, and only a few no. What's interesting about this is we gave the same poll a week ago to a group of districts and states and nonprofits and asked about their community. And there, the overwhelming response was unsure. So it is good to see that right down at the high school level, at least in most cases, though not all, schools have been aware of what modifications are now possible under COVID. All right, great. So I think we'll move on then. And where that brings us to is the wisdom in the room. This is really getting to the main event of today. So we know that even with graduation requirement and flexibility, some seniors will need support to graduate. How can we provide that support? What have folks been thinking about? What have folks been trying? What's been working? What have you tried and isn't working? How can we share with each other how we're approaching this and what we're learning and what we're finding out? So if your school's thought of a way to approach this or had some success or have developed a resource, let us know in the chat. If you have a resource to share, link it. If you're having frustrations and challenges, ask your question of other schools, how they're handling the challenge or frustration you're facing. Let's think about this together.
And I know we have a lot of representation from New Mexico, Mississippi, and Louisiana on the call, who all have some of our earliest graduation dates of the cross state. So I'm sure we'd love to hear from what you all have already figured out as you're approaching your graduation dates soon.
Natalie Sable shared, our school has developed, I'm sorry, it slides around. Our school has developed a senior Phoenix group to sign up to help be a support to the seniors that need it. Each teacher signed up for 1 or 2 seniors to contact twice a week. We have from, I think it might be Principal Bukieri, building administrators and school counselors are making weekly calls to parents, guardians of seniors who are still in limbo. Peter from Rocinante said they're doing daily check-ins. Teacher, counselor, principal Zoom meetings and phone calls. The Phoenix group is based in Cincinnati, Ohio. Saturday classes are starting this weekend. I'm going to work with about 10 seniors and use Google Classroom. This is Marilyn Ramirez. I will be in close contact with them and nag them continuously. Kaz from Las Montanas says individual plans for every senior to support graduation requirements for each individual.
Have folks been pretty much able to contact all their students, or some folks struggling to find some of their students?
Harding, Ohio shared struggling. Struggling to get in contact with many. Laura Tompkins shared, they have some that are missing. Maria, oh wait a minute, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, guys. It slides up and down. It's a little bit of a new skill I'm learning. Savannah Napier says struggling to get in contact with many. Milton Hardrick, we have created a group chat to communicate with seniors and their parents. We have a small class, so we're working out plans for how we'll do graduation. Mariella from Arts and Tech said struggling to find some, but we have systems to get the support of others. Lori Bukieri says success with contacting parents, guardians, but struggle to get a hold of the students directly. Marilyn Ramirez shared, our schools are able to access their attendance officers to make home visits to find the missing seniors. And Kaz from Las Montanas says contacting most, but we have been unsuccessful for only a few. Our Milton Hardrick shared, our biggest struggle is technology for all students and how to continue instruction. And Marilyn Ramirez, back for the seniors question, said we also have a shared file to write notes on all of our students.
I noticed that one survey that had success more with like Edmodo, and my question is, have folks been able? I know there's some requirements in some districts make that easier or harder, but if some folks been able to use various social media mechanisms to sort of find their kids.
We have a couple more coming in now, Bob. We've got from Riverview, Ohio, Remind 101. We have another school has the same. Superintendents are contacting seniors via email with a video and email letter to encourage and motivate the senior class despite the current circumstances. That comes to us from Felicia Walker. Natalie Sable, Google Voice has been great. And we have a hello from Angela from New York City. And then we have somebody who would like to know more about Google Voice. So perhaps we could hear from, who was that?
From Natalie?
Natalie, thank you.
Hi all, yeah, so we went ahead and our district talked about calling the students, and we were concerned about using our own personal number. So what we did is we went on and we downloaded the Google Voice app, and through that it gives you an option. You have to create a Gmail account, and then through that it gives you a list of options of creating your own, of choosing your own phone number, and then that's the phone number that pops up for the kids. But they're able to, you can call the students with it, you can text. They can text you back. So if there's like work or something they can't upload onto the computer, they can text it to us through the Google Voice app. So that's actually been really helpful.
Thank you.
This is Peter Deswood from Rocinante. We also use the same program to contact our students. And then we post stuff on social media, kind of our SEL, or social emotional learning component of it. And when we see students are struggling, we have our support staff reach out to students, and they also, like everyone was saying, use that Google Voice to give numbers out.
We got a couple more comments in the chat. Facebook, Schoolology, Facebook and email, Schoolology, but may have some connectivity issues, and that was the platform Peter was just speaking about. Tara shares, I know one school using social media to spotlight their seniors, so students have reached out to make sure that they're included in the social media spotlight. Otherwise, they would not have been able to reach those seniors. And Faraday High is using Facebook to spotlight seniors.
What are folks, now that flexibility has been given in many places to help students, demonstrate their knowledge in a course, have folks been coming up with ways to give their students a range of ways to demonstrate that they met the requirements of the course remotely? What have folks been thinking about, ways for students to demonstrate that they've earned the credit or met the requirements of the course to get the credit? Have any folks been able to move to things like projects or different ways to demonstrate that knowledge that might be less than the most traditional?
Some folks have used Apex, and we also have some more feedback about folks loving the senior spotlight idea so that the kids reach out to you. In a non-tech way, we have our teachers sending positive postcards to our seniors. Thank you, Charlene. We also have teachers that are being flexible with how students can show their knowledge. Peter says we're using PBL. We're starting, Marilyn Ramirez says we're starting to introduce videos such as TikTok, creating memes. Tara M says non-tech ways are needed. Savannah Napier shares, at this point, it's not required and no grades are being given in Jefferson Parish. There is no accountability in terms of having the students complete work. Technology gaps continue to be an issue for many students. Peter from Rosinante shared, and teaching online synchronous and asynchronous formats. Miyamura in New Mexico also has technology gaps here. Laura Tompkins, we've developed comprehensive projects that could cover many levels within a core area. Peter, again, Deswood says also online using Edgenuity.
I wonder if Laura would be willing to tell us a little more about those comprehensive projects and how they work at many levels.
Yeah, so we're struggling. We have probably 40 to 50% of our kids, they don't have connectivity or devices at home. So we are doing a combination of online with Google Classroom and sets of homework that we're sending. And we are doing meal giveaways on Friday from 11 to 12:30. So during the meal giveaways, we also are handing out our homework packets. So our departments came together and thought, how can we engage our students? And we always talk about projects that we would love to do, but because we have to get the content standards of geometry and algebra, we don't have time to do some of these projects. So we wrapped all of our assignments around a theme. So one was serving others. So within each department, they came up with projects that they could do while serving others and being safe. So there was some science. They were doing, and my counselor's on the call with us too. She recorded herself. So the fine arts recorded themselves out entertaining the neighborhood at a safe distance. So it's kind of fun to see what kids are coming up with. Some are posting them on social media. So just trying to keep everyone connected.
What's really nice about that is two things. One, right, using the crisis to actually try something that you normally couldn't try and see how it works. And then secondly, that idea of helping others really speaks to one of the key findings of the School Connected in this research, which is one of the key ways kids are connected to schools by doing pro-social activities, helping others. And that's one thing that, it gets a little bit, again, disrupted, right, when schooling is remote. So finding a way to tie it to a project that helps them get credit, but also makes that social connection, that connection of helping others, is a really nice combination package.
Yeah, thank you.
We heard from Tori in the chat. In the meantime, we have paper packets that are available for pickup at sites at designated times for students that don't have access to devices. Then we have online options for students that do have devices. We also heard from Hannah on the early warning system echo call earlier this week. I heard one New Mexico middle school is using the strategy to leave packets for pickup at the grocery store for those who can't make it to the designated pickup place in time. And then we also heard from Michelle Timmons. I know a district that has partnered with a local newspaper. The paper donated a bunch of newspaper vending machines to the district, and they are placed in front of schools. Kids can pick up their packets at their convenience now. Pretty cool. And then from Felicia Walker, my daughter has to take pictures of her projects and submit them. Multiple pictures showing the steps as they are being completed of the projects. It's for an AP course, so feedback is crucial as AP exams are coming soon. A lot of her assignments and assessments are free response questions that require them to explain and elaborate on answers for teachers to, again, provide meaningful support.
Thanks. All right, well, that's, thank you. That was a rich discussion. Lots of creative ideas out there and lots of frustrations, right? That's our reality, both frustrations and creative responses. So thank you. We're gonna do now is move on to a second question about our seniors. And this is the group of seniors who, who were likely on track to graduate, but they didn't secure a post-secondary placement before schooling became remote, right? So they're going to graduate, but the uncertainty is about what's their transition next year, where are they headed? What do we know about this group of students? Well, we know one thing that causes some concern is that March, April, and May are typically the months when some seniors apply to especially open access institutions and community college. And we often know that our schools over time have built pretty significant support systems for this to really help students know about what their possibilities are and how to apply. In a number of cases, their community college or open access partners come to high schools and have days where kids can sign up more or less on the spot. And then another challenge we know folks are facing is that all higher ed institutions have closed. They are open remotely also, but they may well open on different schedules. They're making different changes to their application deadlines, right? Some schools are waiving the May 1st deadline to make your choices known for those students that have a placement. Others are not. And we know from a number of schools we work with that this is no simple matter for a student on their own to get this information. If you call up these community colleges or institutions of higher learning right now, you will often get a phone tree. But if you don't know the right department to select from that phone tree, you're going to get mighty frustrated, right? And websites have their own challenges with clarity. So, the concern is, is that if students graduate without a post-secondary placement, they're then in this no person's land of no institutional affiliation, right? They've left the K-12 system. They haven't enrolled in a higher ed system. They're basically on their own to try to figure out this transition. And that's a difficult place to be in any time for a young student. Often students applying to these schools are students that face some degree of challenge, either economically or otherwise. And it's going to be even more so in this environment, right? Because everyone's going to have different responses and different changes, and it's going to be very chaotic. So far, only a few states that we found have actually provided guidance on this issue. And so that, leads to the concern of, could this be sort of an out of sight, out of mind problem that still has some pretty serious effects for our students and communities? So what we want to know to kick this off is our second poll has your district begun to address the issue of seniors without post-secondary placements? And Amanda will bring that poll up again. And so has your school district begun to address the issue of high school seniors without a post-secondary placement? Yes, no, unsure.
While the poll results are coming in, Betty from Zanesville High School shared, when I started the Senior Spotlight, several seniors are beginning to apply online to our local institutions and emailing me to send transcripts, and she got a Go Zanesville High School. And then Nancy Post shared, we have all students apply to the community college in January, and Nancy's from Miamura.
All right, let's give it one more second. We're about 50% response rate. All right, well, we can see this is a little different result. And this one we're unsure is in the lead with almost 46%, and another 24% are no. So that leaves a little bit less than a third where folks have some confidence or knowledge that their district has begun to address the issue of high school seniors without post-secondary placement. All right, so let's get into this. So how can we support seniors that lack a post-secondary placement this spring, this summer, next year? Folks that have been thinking about this, what have you been thinking? What's been working? Folks that just have questions about it, what are your questions?
Tori shares all seniors applied earlier in the year. We are having more difficulty getting the kids to accept their offers now that we cannot physically do it with them.
Yeah, and you know, we can actually put a related question on the table too, right? It's both the seniors that lack a post-secondary placement and it's seniors that have a placement, but are rethinking it or questioning it or facing, as we know, there's to go from acceptance to enrollment, there's many steps along the way and they may be struggling with those steps. So let's talk about both groups of seniors, what folks are thinking about, doing, struggling with, wondering about.
From Michael Turner in Cincinnati, each Friday, schools, through the school counselors, have to report enrollment, enlistment, or employment drilled down to the student by student level. Counselors are working with students to assist in the post-secondary placement of their choice. From Peter Deswood, some of our internship students have been offered jobs and their college will be paid.
Wow, awesome.
From Laura Tompkins, I worry about our students that struggle now having to be in an impossible online situation next year.
One of the things we heard some examples of in a call we had last week, again, it was more with districts and states and nonprofits, was that in a few locales, the sort of high schools and main higher ed institutions are sort of getting together to think about how they can create summer opportunities, sort of one-stop shopping week of, you know, where you could both learn about opportunities, apply, and then actually complete, you know, the steps to enrollment, with the idea being that, you know, in the environment we're in, if we ask kids to have a very elongated process with many steps along the way, that's sort of a recipe for disaster. And so there's a need for local communities to come together and try to create as much as possible a condensed and sort of one-stop or one-week process to sort of make sure that all those steps get done.
So we've got some things coming in the chat. Zanesville High School shared that in addition to their counselors, they also have a local access network that is very busy and trying to reach out to all of the seniors in the county. Kurt Green shared that in Georgia, colleges and universities have waived SAT and ACT requirements this year. Roderick Smith has, oops, sorry, it scrolled away, shared Wingfield High School in Jackson, Mississippi. We've had college application days, October and February. All seniors have been accepted to at least 1, 2, or 4-year college. Since most colleges have waived certain criteria, we have a virtual application day scheduled for April 24th and a virtual FAFSA day scheduled. Peter Deswood shared, San Juan College has created a YouTube video for our students to apply.
So the example for Wingfield High School in Jackson, again, is another nice example of where they're trying to create a condensed process, right? Where you could bring everyone together and get a critical step done in a very focused period of time.
I wonder if Betty from Zanesville High could talk more about the local access network, because I think that kind of goes to what Bob was saying about making sure that communities are organizing to have kind of a more one point of contact for students.
Our local access network is called Scholarship Central, and they have been very involved all school year in all the county schools. They have AmeriCorps college guides that go into the schools and do activities and things like that. But recently, since the closure, they have sent multiple emails, because I'm on their listserv, to all the students. They've had virtual days like they're talking about for scholarship help, because we have a very robust local scholarship selection for kids, just tons of them. So they've been reaching out scholarship by scholarship for students. They've just been very, very active. So it's been good to see.
Wonderful, thank you.
Tori put in the chat, another struggle we are having is with the students that are starting careers as opposed to college. With most companies on a hiring freeze, we are having difficulty, oops, it got away from me, I'm sorry, finding jobs students can apply and interview for, with the exception of FedEx and UPS, who have hired a number of our students already. And then Deanne Austin shares, our senior economics government teacher has been exposing our seniors to the application of financial aid system since October. So 85 to 90% of our seniors have been accepted into a 2 or 4 year institution. We also have had some seniors to speak with recruiters and make the decision to enter into the armed service.
So a nice example of, and I know many schools are working on this, but sort of early and focused efforts of putting folks in a better position when the crisis hit than in some cases where they sort of, we've worked with some schools where they first focus on kids going to selective schools and where the earlier deadlines, and they move on to the kids going to less selective schools in the spring. So it's nice to see some examples of folks really targeting all their kids early to get that well established and that put them in a better position.
And Catherine Lene shares, we've had counselors hosting Zoom meetings with parents to review FAFSA processes, even though that grad requirement has been waived for Louisiana graduates.
And we'll keep it. So what about, this was brought up again, what are folks hearing about kids that have been accepted but are now reconsidering? There's numerous media reports of kids wanting to stay closer to home or uncertain about starting next year. And then, the counterpoint to that is we know, from a large statistical sense that, every case is different, that, kids in more privileged positions can take a gap year and be fine. But for other kids, if you sort of get out of the cycle of being in school, it's much harder to get back into that. And it's a harder road to get back on. So what have folks been experiencing with seniors that, have a place to go, but are reconsidering it?
I know Nancy from Miramar and Gallup mentioned before that they had all students apply to the local community college. Have you had any of what Bob just asked, students who may be changing their minds at this point?
Dr. Kevin Eberly from Buffalo Public Schools, he said, I apologize for coming in late. So if this question was covered, he apologizes, but can they just speak up or just text in the chat? We're just texting in the chat, but we'd love to hear, Kevin, if you have a response to what Bob is sharing, we certainly can have you unmute yourself and share. Marilyn Ramirez shares, I'm not sure what our counselors are doing to support our seniors with this. Michelle Timmons shares, This is a big challenge for everyone. In Ohio, we don't even know if the schools will be face-to-face or in-line in the fall, nor are we sure whether things like dorms will be open in the fall. And Nancy Post shares, we have students considering staying locally. Kaz from Las Montanas shares, we have not gotten to this point with our seniors yet. I think there are too many unknowns right now.
All right, well, people are considering any final thoughts on that. I'm gonna move, we have one more, I believe, if I remember my slides right. Yes, our general question. Oh wait, no, sorry. Do we have any other thoughts or questions about the larger topic of supporting seniors during COVID-19? We've talked a little bit about kids that need credits to graduate. Then we talked about kids that didn't have a post-secondary placement when schooling became remote. We touched on kids that have a placement, might be considering. Are there other issues that folks are facing with their seniors because of COVID-19 that they'd like some thoughts or advice or other ideas on? Now's your time to ask your fellow high school redesign schools from across the nation. What else have folks been trying to figure out for their seniors, or more broadly for your
Natalie from Cincinnati would like to know, does anyone have a plan for fourth quarter grades? Let's see, I'm sorry, I missed a few. Then we have Betty from Zanesville. We're supporting them with depression and mental health issues. Valerie, social emotional support for missing out on graduation ceremony and senior traditions that they are missing out on. Michael Turner shares, the emotional aspect of this has been a focus for some students. We have to try to figure out how to meet the therapy needs of some students with mental health partners.
And then Kaz from Las Montanas has said that New Mexico is emphasizing pass incomplete and at least 50% SEL support for its academic support.
Has anyone with an upcoming graduation date been thinking through what Valerie mentioned, just sort of recreating some of those traditions and rituals virtually or in some sort of way compensating for that to address the social emotional aspect?
Okay. Also, from Las Montanas, they are extending the time frame for seniors to complete graduation requirements. Michelle Timmons shares, pass-fail doesn't necessarily meet the requirements for NCAA rules. Does anyone know if NCAA is adapting? Natalie from Cincinnati, our district has discussed doing a virtual graduation. Peter Deswood from Rocinante says they are working on a plan. And Natalie from Cincinnati shared, our school, though, would like to do something more once social distancing is lifted. And Peter shared possibly a virtual graduation. John Newman shares, apparently our parish, Bonnabel High School, Jefferson Parish, has set in-person graduation dates for July. Faraday is considering a drive-through graduation, and Rocinante is discussing a traditional graduation ceremony once the guidelines are lifted. They are fully committed to holding it, even if it ends up being 2022 or pushed back to July. Back to you, Bob.
I was just curious if we could hear from Faraday. What is a drive-through graduation?
I'm not sure we're going to hear more about that just
Yep.
yet. So we're going to go back to the chat. Sanja from Mississippi is asking, have schools and districts fully fleshed out their messaging to students, parents, and the community for seniors that do not graduate with all of the flexibility provided? Laura Tompkins shares, we are planning our valedictorian, salutatorian, and class president giving inspirational messages until a traditional graduation can be planned. Laura Tedesco from New York shares, some schools in New York, whoops, so sorry guys. Some schools in New York are sending homemade posters and signs home to students that can be placed in their front window, door, yard, or by the mailbox that says a 2020 graduate lives here, just as a way to recognize students. Elsa Carter shares signs include a picture and bio of the students. And Felicia Walker says drive-in graduation. So maybe we could hear from Faraday or Felicia, Bob, to hear more about that drive-in graduation.
And they've been texting. They say they set up signs and people can drive through like the field, sports field, and see signs that include pictures and bios of the students.
Eli shared he heard of a school looking into the feasibility of using a drive-in movie theater for graduation and trying to figure out if they project each student on the screen when their name was being read.
That would be a great repurposing. That would be a great repurposing. All right, well, thank you. That was a rich discussion. Again, many creative ideas that folks are figuring out in these challenging times, and then again, some problems that remain that we have to keep working on. So what I want to do in our last few minutes here is just get a little reflection on our discussion today, and to get some feedback if you thought it was useful, of value, and should we try to think of having one or a couple more of these as ways to keep connections between our cross-state redesigned high schools across states, to keep giving you a venue to hear from fellow schools on issues you're trying to think through and solve, both in responding to COVID and in high school redesign more broadly. And if so, what might be the topics? So if folks just want to take a minute or two to say, you don't have to say yes, but if what will be, if yes, what will be good topics? What should we focus on? Should it be mainly COVID related? Should it also just be about continuing high school redesign? What would be useful? Let us hear from you.
Tara wants to know how our local PBS stations might support graduation. And Laura also agrees that would be a great question. Peter from New Mexico says, yes, let's please continue the discussions.
Yeah, local public broadcasting is an interesting idea. Yeah, and they've been very invested in increasing graduation rates. They've had a very big American Graduates program. So I think I'd encourage folks to reach out and see what kind of partnerships could be formed.
From Peter, we heard a topic, how are we managing or supporting staff and students? From Ann Catherine Lena, we have a lot of virtual meetings weekly, but I think these discussions periodically would be helpful. Tara topics, how we are supporting teachers with technology, mental health, and self-care. Angela Rodriguez, great discussion. Oops, I lost you, sorry. Great discussion, grateful to hear the thoughtful and creative ideas. Kevin from Buffalo. absolutely continue. What innovations are being used to grab the students who have not yet connected with teachers? Charlene Myers from Riverview, yes, we should continue. Kelly Brock, I like the idea of having these meetings, thank you. I wonder if we could organize each meeting around a level and maybe every other week. Marilyn Ramirez says, I like the idea of broadcasting, continue these meetings and share resources for our seniors and also on redesign. Ross Anante shared, whoops, advancing PD for teachers, virtual classroom best practices. Oh, I'm so sorry. That was a correction. It was lever, each lever, not level for those topics before. Sorry about that. Thank you. Thank you for that. Let's see. I think moving forward, many schools need to really have a push for 100% technology, internet access, and proficiency with pertinent software. Figuring out the logistics on that could be worthwhile. How to engage students with social distancing, what the new school year may look like if social distancing is still in place, helping faculty avoid and staff avoid burnout, virtual education and assessment best practices. I think that's it, Bob. Back to you.
I think I also saw what about how to re-engage and restart learning in the fall. Came in there.
And one just came in from Stephanie Dixon, helping teachers support students in distance learning environments.
Yep. All right. Thank you for your feedback. Let's see here. I'm going to not do the poll because I think we know the answer. Because I just want to take the last few minutes to leave you with some resources. There's I think, an interesting webinar being held on Monday by the Aspen Institute on how to schools can ensure social connections during isolation. Or there's a couple of different school districts on that, giving what they're doing at the district level. We've put together a PowerPoint and also a sort of a voiced over version of it on how to keep students connected to school when schooling is remote. That tries to give some practical ways to keep the key points of school connection, which we know is connection to a caring adult who knows you as a person at the school, connection to peer groups and peers like you, the pro-social activity we talked about before, and a sense that your school is a welcoming place. And how do we keep those things alive when schooling is remote? We've, at our high school redesign website, we've created a small set of curated resources. I know people bombarding with lists and lists and lists of resources. We tried to keep it a very narrow list on things we think are specifically helpful to schools, high school redesign schools and other schools for sure, but particularly the schools in our network. And so might be worth a quick perusal of that. There are some nice useful tools and tips there. And then finally, if you have any follow-up ideas or thoughts, please send them our way. We'll be sending out a recording of this session, a copy of the slides, and we'll also put together the chat. We did this for other, we'll put together the chat and the references in a sort of a condensed, comprehensible way to look at it. We'll try to get that all out to you by early next week. And if you'd like to know who else came, we'll happily provide that to you. And we hope you all be well. We thank you, and onwards with our work and helping our kids. Thank you.